The public health problem that my guest is most passionate about right now is burnout and the downstream impact that it has on chronic diseases. Understanding public health has allowed her the ability to better understand this downstream impact of silent sufferers. During our conversation, she dives into this topic and so much more. You're listening to the PHEC podcast, episode 212. The field of public health is so broad, overlapping multiple industries. With epidemiology at the core of public health, there are an unlimited number of ways to target specific populations, health conditions, environmental issues, and causes that matter most to you. My name is Dr. Huntley, and I'm the host here on the Public Health Epidemiology Conversations podcast. I'm an epidemiologist, consultant, and entrepreneur with over 20 years of experience in healthcare and public health. On this podcast, my guests and I engage in conversations that demonstrate the importance of public health and epidemiology across a variety of industries, helping you think outside the box and inspire greater positive impact in communities around the world. Now, let's dive into the topic of this brand new episode. Greetings, everyone, and thank you for joining me on this episode. I believe that this episode will inspire you to pursue greater impact in public health and improve health outcomes for yourself and others. Let me introduce you to my guest, Sumana Jeddy. Sumana Jeddy is a content creator, influencer, and the founder and CEO of Jeddy Wellness, which its brand name is Wellness Shots, and she explains that during our interview. Sumana has completed a Bachelor of Science degree in microbiology, followed by a Master of Public Health degree, both from the University of British Columbia. She spent 10 years of her career in infectious disease surveillance in public health as a scientist. Many of those years were spent in a laboratory extracting DNA and RNA from viruses, and then later in management as manager of infectious disease epidemiology. Sumana has published over 20 peer-reviewed research articles on various infectious diseases and has presented disease research at international conferences. Her brand, Wellness Shots, provides targeted, outcome-based wellness strategies for healthcare businesses and individuals. She does this by identifying unique organizational barriers and provides solutions that are not only grounded in science, data, and empathy, but are also modern and playful. She left her public health career in May of 2020 to fully commit to her business and help people who were silently suffering in their burnout. Sumana believes that healthy people will create healthy communities. She empowers and educates individuals, organizations, and communities about workplace wellness, toxic workplace environments, and burnout. She also offers educational workshops on burnout for businesses and individuals. She is mentoring MPH students and graduates on how to navigate leadership challenges to become better healthcare leaders. Sumana has an effervescent personality and values compassion, community, empathy, and kindness. She loves the outdoors, and physical wellness is a priority. She is an extrovert with many friends around the globe, but she also appreciates silence and reflective hours. Her motto is to live in the present and joyfully say no to anything that does not bring you any joy. It is my pleasure to connect my interview with Sumana right after this very special announcement. Have you been thinking about becoming a public health consultant, but just don't know where to start? Public health professionals often have multiple interests and are passionate about more than just one topic. They often have a very difficult time narrowing those interests down to a starting point for their business. I help my clients integrate public health and entrepreneurship to start and grow businesses that they are excited about, serving the communities that they care most about. If you have ideas about consulting or entrepreneurship in public health and you're ready to start a business and would like guidance and help to develop those ideas into a business, or if you would like guidance and support as you grow the business you've already started, then I invite you to reach out and connect with me to discuss options for business coaching. Just visit drchuntley.com and click on coaching from the main menu to submit your request. Well, I'm very, very happy to introduce all of you to my guest on this episode, Sumana Jeddy. Sumana, welcome to the podcast.
Dr. Huntley, it is my pleasure. I'm delighted to be here.
Oh, I'm so happy. We were, just for the audience to understand, we are very amped up right now because we were chatting for a little bit before I hit record and just kind of doing a little overview and touching bases. And we're so excited. So what you're hearing is very genuine. Why don't we just dive in? I would love for you to just tell the audience a bit about yourself, who you are, kind of what you do.
Absolutely. My name is Sumana Jeddy. I am from Alberta, Canada. And what I'm currently doing is a entrepreneurship opportunity. I call that an opportunity because it's such a gift to be an entrepreneur in the wellness burnout space. What I used to do in the past was I was a manager for infectious disease epidemiology with the government of Alberta. So that's where I worked. And prior to that, I worked in the provincial public health lab, also doing epidemiology and surveillance of infectious diseases. So my background has been in public health, in infectious diseases by basically my whole life. Started off in microbiology, worked in the wet lab for a couple of years, and then into management after that. And then right around the pandemic chaos, I had to really shift my perspective a little bit. Went through some personal tragedy as well with my family, lost my dad to COVID. So that kind of shifted my priorities a little bit. And I decided, you know what, I really want to work for myself and really help support people that are struggling in their burnout, not just talking about prevention, but really thinking about burnout as a public health crisis. So that's a little bit about me.
Oh my goodness. So sorry about your dad. And my heart goes out to you on that. And I just applaud you for being able to, really find a way to repurpose that energy in that crisis to something to serve in a bigger purpose in a bigger way. Let's go back to the beginning because I really like to learn a lot from sort of the journey. So my first question to you is, when did you first become interested in public health?
I first became, now I come from a East Indian, South Indian background. So our families are very much, we only have a couple of career options presented to us when we're growing up, which is you can either be a medical doctor or you can go to law school. And funny enough, my three brothers are all in law school. I decided to go into healthcare, but I didn't really want to pursue medical school per se. I really loved and I fell in love with, microbiology in sort of my second or third year of the program in health sciences. I met this incredible professor, and we were learning about microbiology. We were learning about bacteria and viruses and parasites, and just this fascination of like, what is it that we cannot see that can really cause so much chaos in a human body and can invade our systems and really, can lead to death, right? So that was a fascination. And I have to give a lot of credit to my professor who I met and who really ignited this idea that there is more to a healthcare career besides just going into, becoming a registered nurse or a medical doctor, which is a great profession. I really have a lot of respect for people who are in those professions. I've been working with medical doctors my whole life, but public health in itself is so vast. So there are opportunities to do beyond what the cliche career options are. So that's where the fascination began, Dr. Huntley.
Yeah, that's wonderful because I've worked with professionals, either, students or graduates or anyone trying to navigate and transition into public health, either brand new in the career field or transition. And I often find that people can either be overwhelmed by all of the options in public health or a little paralyzed by it. But I love it when someone says that they were fascinated by how broad the field is. And that was what when that draws you in, I think that's a really, really good thing.
Yeah, I agree with you. It was just by luck as well that you end up meeting these amazing individuals in your university career. So I really do encourage, if there are listeners out here who are just starting to pay attention to their public health or just their regular careers, it's important to understand that you never know who is going to ignite that fascination, which professor, which course, and really try to develop your sense of purpose by having these conversations. I used to spend a lot of time talking to professors after class to just sort of understand what their journey was and kind of the lifestyle that I wanted to have. Like, did I really want to have a lifestyle where I have to wear scrubs all day, go into the hospital? I couldn't stand the idea of seeing blood, and all of those fears and anxieties were creeping in. So I really do think it's important to have these conversations with people, with your peers, with your colleagues, and diversify in your early parts of your career, because you never know, who you're going to meet and what those challenges or opportunities, how they present themselves.
Oh, yeah, I absolutely agree with you on that. Here's another question that I love to ask because I think it's important to connect with your passion in public health. So what population or condition or other public health problem are you most passionate about now?
This, to me, I had to think of it in two sort of dimensions: the pre-entrepreneur Sumana, and then the one that is right now. So I'll give you both answers, because I spent most of my life, learning about infectious diseases. So at first I thought, yes, that was the most passion that I had, was what are these bugs? Why are they causing so much havoc in our lives? Why are they antibiotic resistant organisms? So that was what I thought would be the root cause of a lot of public health problems, was communicable diseases that are, causing illness and death in a lot of communities. Now, what I'm realizing, having been through a burnout, having been through a lot of anxiety and developing, but also recovering from chronic anxiety now, I've realized that chronic diseases, I'm really fascinated by the impact of chronic diseases in our communities. A lot of people that are suffering from burnout, which is what I'm most passionate about now, end up developing a lot of hypertension, diabetes, cardiovascular issues, chronic anxiety, depression, a lot of mental health challenges. And that, to me, I had never really even dived into. We touched a little bit on, on chronic diseases sort of in our public health program. We talked a little bit about mental health in our program, but we didn't really dive into it as much as I had wanted to. And because my career was in infectious diseases and epidemiology, most of my focus was in this one area. But I'm really starting to notice that there's way more to public health. There's way more challenges in illnesses that have long-term consequences. And so that's where my passion lies now.
I can relate to that. I had a background similar to yours. I worked in infectious disease for a long time. I worked in laboratories and microbiology, and you're right. Your focus is on infectious disease, the bugs, what's causing the antibiotics, doing the susceptibilities, all the things. And then I pivoted into chronic diseases, and it's completely different focus, especially when you consider some things that are some conditions where, it has that lifestyle element and things can be preventable through lifestyle changes and adjustments. And then there's that point when you start looking at the impact of these infectious diseases on chronic disease populations. And, we saw that a lot, or we still see that as we navigate this pandemic with COVID and its impact on populations that are suffering from chronic diseases, like people who have diabetes and obesity, and how the impact of this infectious disease is even greater on that population. So that makes it a little bit of a meta situation there. That's very interesting to move from infectious disease to chronic disease, but your eyes are wide open when you've had some experience in both areas.
Mm-hmm. I agree. I mean, there is that real, and you're right. We did see a lot of that we are seeing a lot of that in this COVID crisis, where the populations that are being impacted are the ones that have all these other conditions, right? So it's been a really reflective journey from, being in public health, being in infectious diseases, focusing more on now chronic diseases and the impact of workplace wellness and burnout. And then just kind of thinking of it as a continuum, that our health and wellness illness has so many layers, and we really need to be so diligent in taking care of ourselves, because once you get a chronic disease, I mean, you're living with it for the most of your life. Like I said, my family, I have a lot of lawyers in my family, and I see the impact of work-related stress that can cause, gastrointestinal problems and IBS and Crohn's disease. And then you start to realize I can't reverse it. It is irreversible, right? And that is the scary part.
Tell me more about burnout. You mentioned that you had experienced this as well. So can you tell me a little bit more about what that was like for you, not crossing any lines that you're not comfortable with, but just in terms of maybe there's something other people need to be more aware of as we're a lot of us that are listening. I know a lot of my community members are also have a healthcare background or are frontline and more involved with the public and engaging in these stressful work situations. I'd like to know more about that.
Yeah, absolutely. My burnout experience, again, having worked in healthcare, I joke about it sometimes on my TikTok. I say, oh my God, we are like so great at burning out. We are so good at burning ourselves out. We should get like an A+ in all of our burnout experiences. But it's because we are overachievers. We are the high performers. We are the community that is the giving community, right? Any occupation where you're giving a lot of yourself, we are number one on that burnout sort of pyramid. So for me, what happened was I ended up, honestly, it was maybe just a stroke of bad luck, but a lot of unfortunate things kept happening in the workplace, dysfunctional workplace, not a lot of support from management. And I really did think that I had to do it all by myself. So it was just honestly a combination of high workload, no manager support, and just other components of harassment and discrimination that came all colliding together to a point where my body was like, I can't do this anymore. And it gradually creeps up on you. And I say this a lot in my burnout conversations. This burnout symptoms can start with something as, simple as like I have pain in my back or my shoulder or my leg. And then a few months later, I started having memory problems. I couldn't remember my password. I couldn't remember if I turned the oven on or off, or if I locked my front door, where my keys were, where my ID badge was. So a lot of just behavioral things which were abnormal. And I think when I realized once that I ended up going to work, funny enough, I went to work and I didn't have socks on. And I'm like, what is going on with you, lady? Something is wrong with you. Right? So that realization kicks in. And then when I had forgotten my password for the 5th time in the same day in 24 hours, of my work computer, that was the light bulb that went on. And I thought something's not right. I feel, and I say this as well, I felt like my brain is broken. And I've had a lot of burnout individuals say the same to me. They feel like they're not themselves. And the best thing I could have done at that point was to take some time to recover and then come back and be better.
That's interesting. So I'm I'm wondering how many, I know a few times in the past, so I knew I was in burnout, but I wonder how many times that I get so close and just didn't really recognize it, because some of what you described, and we can call it other things, we can say, oh, I'm just tired, or I'm getting older, or we can call it so many other things and miss the signs, I would think.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, exhaustion is just one component of burnout, right? We all feel that mental and physical exhaustion, that is number one. But then what happens if you don't really stop to take care of your burnout is you do become more cynical with yourself, with your job, right? You do start to depersonalize and start to identify that maybe this is not the right space for me. I don't fit here. I don't belong here. And honestly, all of those symptoms started to happen to me because I did go back to work 3 months later, but there was no resolution in the workplace. So it was almost like going back to fight the fire again. And I had just come back from what I thought was full recovery, but it wasn't, because now you're back in the same place doing the same thing. And in the world of infectious diseases, I'm sure you can understand, this is just right before the pandemic, there was always some outbreak. There was always influenza. There was always pertussis. There's always measles. There's something going on. So my job was always high intensity, high workload. And then right at the cusp of when I was just starting to feel better, bam, we heard about this Wuhan virus, and then the workload increased again. And a lot of us don't really recognize the cycle. And if you don't recover the first time around fully, then relapse can happen very, very quickly. And then your recovery can be even worse.
So tell me more about, this is where you decided to start your business and start really addressing this from the entrepreneurial stance. So tell me a bit about that kind of transition. Like, what did that look like? How did you decide that this is what I'm going to do and turn this into a business?
Yeah. So basically for me, what had happened was there was a mental switch that had happened right after my MPH and after this burnout experience. I knew that there had to be a transition that had to happen. And I knew that I wanted to serve the community some way, somehow. I knew that entrepreneurship would be a great first step to sort of explore. So I had started exploring entrepreneurship while I was still working in public health, just looking to see what business models are like, looking to see what the pain points are. Of course, I come from research, so researching to see what other people are doing and if I can sort of just use that model to create my own opportunities. That took a little bit of time. And then unfortunately, because of COVID, a lot of that time went away, but I realized that I had to dive back in. And like I said, the tragedy that happened in my family was a pivotal moment where staying in the workplace and not being able to speak about burnout, where everybody else, I was noticing everybody else suffering through it as well. People breaking down, people crying, people having panic attacks. And I thought, good Lord, there has to be a better solution, not as a rebellious way, but almost as a way to say, I want to advocate for a better system where people in the workplace don't feel like they don't have a voice. So I always say, people who are burning out are silently suffering in the workplace. So giving them the opportunity to recover from it. So I just started really just going on social media, rebranding myself on LinkedIn. I changed my LinkedIn account so I could rebrand myself, kind of disconnect from the employer a little bit to have sort of my own self-employed persona, which is different from my infectious disease manager persona. So that strategy was very, very specific and very strategic so that I could transition and leave my 9-to-5 and move into a space where I can actually help communities.
I'm frantically taking notes here because you don't know this, but you're hitting on a lot of hot topics that I cover often. I love how you say you very strategically rebranded yourself. I love how you use the platforms, you use your existing platforms to help you align with where you wanted to go, to attract the people and the people around you that you could serve or to kind of support the message and kind of what you have. I like that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. So this is great. So what's the name of your business and describe who you serve, which your ideal customer?
Absolutely. So the brand name of the business is Wellness Shots, which when I was thinking about it, again, you might chuckle a little bit. I was thinking, well, how do I inject wellness into people? What kind of vaccine can I give to people to inject wellness into their lifestyle? So literally I was talking to my girlfriends about it and we were coming up with a few names for the brand. And I'm like, oh my God, it's like taking a shot of tequila. Let's call it Wellness Shots. So that was the name of the brand. And that is the trade name. So I'm sticking with that for now, unless someone has a problem with. No one's really asked me. And I think people kind of enjoy the story when I do tell them why I picked that name. So that is Wellness Shots, the brand name, the trade name. The company is Jeddy Wellness. I have incorporated that company. So there's two different clients I like to work with. I do particularly like to work with healthcare organizations because my background is in healthcare, I really want to support any organization that has, people in the healthcare umbrella who are working really hard. I understand the workload of healthcare. I want to be able to give you research-based strategies to identify your pain points and to really give you a sustainable wellness strategy so that you can have staff that are not going to burn out because again, that turnover, that rehiring, the retraining adds a lot more expenses and you're losing profits, you're losing, good talent. So let's keep the talent within the organization. So that's one business. That's the B2B. And the B2C are honestly individuals who need my support, who want to be able to share their stories. My TikTok community has been growing tremendously over the last 3 to 4 weeks on understanding that it isn't just the prevention part that I like to focus on, but the recovery. What is your life after burnout going to look like? It doesn't have to suck. Your life after burnout can be very much, you can thrive, you can have all these awesome opportunities to succeed, but you need to have a very strategic plan as to how you're going to develop yourself after coming out of this burnout experience. So those are my two sort of big clients.
Nice, nice. And so you provide just specific, or you customize, I would imagine, the consulting services if it's the healthcare organization, depending on what their needs are. And is it the same for individuals if someone wants to work with you individually?
Yes. So they are a little bit different because when you think about organizations, their strategies are going to be more focused on how can I connect with different individuals? How can I, and this is where epidemiology really comes in because I really love to work with data. So to really analyze each and every individual's, get an assessment, get a feel of what the individuals are experiencing, what the management is experiencing, what is the upper management versus mid-manager experiencing, analyze that data and create a strategy for them that really works in all the levels, because the manager burnout, which is what I had experienced, is very different from an epi or a analyst or a policy analyst burnout. They have a completely different skill set, a different workload, a different set of experiences that can cause their burnout. So that is a little bit different. For individuals, I really do focus on giving them research-based strategy so they can understand. Of course, I always say, go to your doctor. You definitely need a family physician to help you alleviate some of those major symptoms of depression or sleeplessness. But there are some outcome-based strategies that will help you have a holistic lifestyle so that you don't relapse, so that you don't go back and get ill again.
I really like the way you explain that, especially connecting it to your understanding of epidemiology. That was wonderful. That was perfect, because that's just exactly where I was going with that. But that's so well said. So thank you for that. That makes so much sense to me. Just as a side here, if anybody's wondering, B2B means business to business. So when she's talking about healthcare, her business to another business, and B2C is her business to the consumer or customer individual. We have some folks that may not understand that when you say B2B or B2C. I want to make sure we're all on the same page.
Oh my God. Yes. Sorry. I should have been a little bit more clear about that. Thank you so much, Dr. Huntley.
Yeah, that's fine. I try to catch a lot of these so that I can catch it in there. Sometimes my questions are just naturally, I'm popping up with what I think people are automatically asking or wondering, but sometimes I'll miss them, but sometimes I do catch them.
I love that. And really having to learn as you transition from public health into entrepreneurship, having to learn the business lingo, and then vice versa. When I use a lot of scientific terms, I've had a lot of people say, what does that mean? I'm like, oh, exactly. Okay, let me explain to you.
Exactly. No, I think that's great. I would ask though, what, in terms of your understanding of public health, how do you think that this is helping you better serve your clients and community, or have even a greater impact through your business?
The entire concept of wellness shots and being able to serve the community. I've said this before and I say it all the time. I always say that our communities, our individual health really does create, if your individuals are healthy, you're going to have healthier communities. So it really does start from you. You are the person that has full control, full autonomy on your health and wellness. So if you can start to create that health and wellness strategy for yourself, you can then now teach it to your family, to your students, to your colleagues. I just see this as a domino effect in a positive way where we can really have healthier communities. And in public health, we're always, really relating back to our social determinants of health and how do we really look at population health in that big picture. We don't really look at individual health and public health as much as we do as our communities. And with all the data that I've looked at in the past, even with the research I've done, it's always let's look at this data and then make general statements about how this experiment is going to help our community. So I think the impact of the work that I'm doing is really just to start from bottom level up, teach the individuals so that you can have this like amazing positive effect, and then you can teach your communities, and then we can be healthy.
Oh, I love it. I can just feel your passion and certainly hear your enthusiasm as you describe and, explain that and answer my question. So thank you for that. I just have a couple of more questions and then I'll let you go. My audience is a blend of, we have public health students, professionals, entrepreneurs. We have anyone and everyone listening, that are interested in some aspect of health could be listening to this podcast. So is there like one bit of advice or tip that you would give to someone listening to this conversation, just who may be interested in the industry or niche, just one bit of advice that you would leave them with?
The one advice that I will give people is please listen to your body. Pay really close attention to your inner intuition. We always talk about self-awareness as that onion that you're trying to peel. And every time you peel this onion, you start to discover something else about yourself. Doesn't matter where you are in your career, whether you're a student right now, just starting to learn about public health, ask those questions, get a good sense of who you are and who you want to be, and listen to your body. I can guarantee you, your body never lies. That gut feeling that you get, the butterflies in your stomach. I had a few when I just popped into this interview. I'm like, oh my God, this is going to be a fantastic interview. So really pay attention to your body. Your body never lies. And whatever you can do, try to develop that self-awareness skill early. And if you haven't yet, develop it now. It's never too late.
I love that. I love that. So I imagine that you can help if anyone's at this point wondering, well, I want to know how, then that's where I really want your mind to be. Because in the show notes, I'm going to tell you in just a little while how to connect to the show notes. I have all the links where you can connect with Sumana and learn so much more and continue the conversation with her, whether it's for your organization or individually. But for right now, Sumana, can you maybe tell people where they can connect with you if someone's listening wants to go right now?
Absolutely. LinkedIn and TikTok are my two platforms that I'm very, very active. So find me there. I'm always there answering questions and supporting the community.
Amazing. Okay. We're going to have all the links on the show notes. I'll tell you about that in just a moment. Sumana, thank you so much for joining me and for this great conversation. I'm such a fan of what you're doing. It's been a delight to get to know you just from watching on social media and for our friends that we have in common. But I've really enjoyed this deep dive in the conversation, and I look forward to keeping in touch with you.
Oh my goodness. Absolutely. Dr. Huntley, this has been such a pleasure. I am so happy that you were able to get in touch with me. We were able to make time to have this conversation. And I really, really do hope that listeners, listening can find some value out of this conversation. So thank you so, so much.
Amazing. Well, I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Sumana. We had such a great time before the recording started, as well as continuing the chat for a while after the recording ended. And I look forward to keeping in touch with her. I took a lot of notes during the interview and would like to share just a few of my favorite takeaways. One of my favorite comments from Sumana was when she said that she considers it a gift to be an entrepreneur. That deeply resonated with me because I feel the same way. Some of you may have caught this, but others may not. She talked about how she strategically rebranded herself to better align with her role as an entrepreneur instead of the employee. The way you brand yourself is important, and there's so much more to branding than just superficially choosing colors and a logo. This is a little beyond the scope of the podcast in terms of going deep on the topic, but it is something I definitely cover when I work with my clients on a much deeper level. It is just so important to help my clients as they start their businesses and as they grow and expand on the businesses that they've already started with this clarity around branding, what that means and what is most important and what can wait a while and just all of the nuances around that. But I just really found it was a valuable little nugget that Sumana touched on when she said that she strategically rebranded herself to, better align with her role as the entrepreneur instead of the employee. So that's also to say, even as the employee, it's important to brand yourself properly and appropriately. If you need help with that, just reach out to me separately. I'd be happy to go a little bit deeper on that. But I wanted to highlight that. That was really one of my favorite takeaways from our conversation. And then just one last thing before I wrap up. From someone who worked with and managed epidemiologists, Sumana explained that understanding epidemiology allows her to evaluate the impact of burnout in the communities that she serves. She finds herself asking epi questions like, what is the demographic? What are the social and economic factors contributing to the prevention or recovery of burnout? So many great takeaways and so many more notes, but I just wanted to share a few of those with you as I wrap up this episode. I'd like to thank Sumana for coming on the podcast, sharing her public health journey and insights, as well as the details of her business with all of us. If you'd like to connect with Sumana, and she mentioned that her favorite platforms are LinkedIn and TikTok. So I have the links for all of that on the show notes page. So if you'd like to connect with her, then just visit the show notes page for this episode, which is episode 212, and you'll find all the links to connect. Go to phecpodcast.com and then navigate to episode 212. Also, remember that you can click on coaching from the main menu if you're interested in working with me as your business coach. All right, everyone. Until next time, have a fantastic rest of your day. Thank you for listening to the Public Health Epidemiology Conversations podcast. Visit phecpodcast.com to find the show notes for each episode and to learn how to work with me.